Welcome to Impact Effect Podcast. This week we have such an amazing guest, a great friend of mine, someone who has been extremely influential in my growth, my education, my strategy around sales, how to show up, be an amazing human being, and how to lead with positive impact. So I'm just very, very excited for this episode because I know it's going to be juicy. There's going to be a ton of good details, stories, information. But please help me welcome Nicole Cramer.
Thank you, Jim. What an awesome introduction. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited. I'm fired up. Every time we get together, it's a great conversation, whether we're grabbing a pizza at Emmy Squared or, running into each other at an amazing event or speaking on stage together. It's just always a deep, amazing conversation and connection. But in true Impact Effect Podcast fashion, the first question that I ask all our guests is, how are you showing up in the world and providing impact today?
Such a good question, because that's what we're all looking to do, right? Make an impact, matter in this world. So you know how a lot of times people find themselves in very important conversations regarding business and making sales? I help people show up to those conversations without feeling salesy, without feeling pushy, and having the skill set and the confidence to create the outcomes that they want.
Two very important things, skill set and confidence.
Yes.
I knew this was going to get juicy today. Right off the bat, let's go.
We're going there.
How do you do that?
I do that in a lot of ways. Speaking and coaching are two of the main forms that I support people in mastering their important conversations. I run a lot of trainings and workshops, as you know, and really help people build the competence that leads to the confidence. So that competence that they're building comes through understanding human connection, sales psychology, and how to express themselves so that it matters when they say something, that they're able to have influence. And that is what leads to their confidence to show up better in those important conversations.
Has there been a period of time in your life where you didn't have that competence or the confidence?
Both.
Yeah. Is that what pushed you to really dive into this and kind of put all your energy, or was there something else that kind of pushed you along this journey? Because you have done the work before the work. You have put yourself in so many rooms and around so many great people, and you have such a depth of knowledge around it.
Thank you.
Where did it come from? Why?
So if we were speaking specifically around like sales and sales conversations, I remember how it felt when I first started a sales job, and I had been a high school math teacher for 15 years. So as far as I was concerned, I didn't have any sales experience. And I remember my biggest fear being I didn't want to be salesy, I didn't want to be pushy, I didn't want to be manipulative, but I wanted to help people. I knew that at the core of it, that's really what I wanted to do. I like people, I like building relationships, and I want to help them solve their problems if there's a way that I have to do that. And I had such fears around not wanting to be salesy and pushy that I held myself back in ways that, and I'm not saying this needs to be about speed, but it's really about the true essence of helping people. I held myself back from helping people in certain situations because I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't know that there were ways for me skills that I could learn that would help me show up more competently in those conversations. So when I first started doing this, I actually didn't see myself being a sales coach. I went from being like I said, a high school math teacher for 15 years, and then I went into sales, and I did end up becoming the #1 salesperson in the country. But my goal was to be a health coach. And I was a health coach. I'd gotten certified, but to start a business and grow a business in health coaching. And I think I felt like maybe I was the only person on the planet that didn't know sales before I started doing sales, right? I just assumed, I'm like, if you're in a sales role, you know what you're doing. If you own a business, you're good at sales. And as I started to get to know a lot of other health coaches in the communities and the circles that I was in, I felt like so many of them were not doing the work that they love doing. And the one thing that they kept saying to me is, I don't want to feel salesy. I don't want to feel pushy. And this is after me finding my way to great success in my corporate sales job. And I'm like, well, just do this, or just do this, or just do this. We'd all get together as a group of health coaches. We were all friends growing our businesses. And I couldn't believe how every single time the conversation turned to, how do I get clients? How do I not feel pushy? How do I not feel salesy? And I realized, I'm like, you're not helping people with the thing that you have a gift for helping them with because you're afraid of being salesy and pushy. Okay, well, just try this or just try this. And finally, one day, one of them said, you should do this. And I was like, do what? And she goes, you should help health coaches learn how to sell. Like, that's what's holding us back. And I was like, no. I want to help make this world a healthier place. I don't want to be a sales coach. She said, I don't think you're thinking of this in the right way. If you help us who don't know how to sell, don't want to feel pushy, don't want to feel salesy, if you help us make more sales, the world will be a healthier place. And I went, that's when I saw the ripple effect. That's when I saw the opportunity, because she said, you're so passionate about this and you're so good at this. Like, you were number one, and now you help us every single time we get together. And that's when I hired my first business coach. And she literally looked at me and said, I didn't tell her anything of that conversation. She said, you're a sales coach for health coaches. And that's pretty much how it started. And I wouldn't have seen myself as being a sales coach. However, when I was in my corporate job, I did a lot of coaching. I trained a lot of people, because when you're the number one person, they're like, hey, will you take this person around, take them on a ride along. And I enjoyed it. I just didn't know that it was a thing that I could or would do. And then it all came together and it made sense.
What a great story. Like, what a great experience. And what continuously kept coming to my mind was those micro moments. Mm-hmm. And that person who brought together the pieces and saw from the 30,000 foot view your skill set, how you're helping, how you're impacting. And that one conversation said, oh, wow, let me look at this perspective and let me look at it from a different lens. And here we are having a conversation and knowing how many people you've helped, right? I mean, like, your name comes up often, right? We were just talking about before this, right? There was another conversation, and how do you know this person and that person? And so the impact is there and it is happening, but it's just so unique, and it's almost comical, because there probably, I mean, in your case, there was those signs, you just weren't looking at it that way. Right. And it gets me thinking of just all those micro moments that we walk by and we pass by. And of course, we can't understand and register it all. Right. And we're not superhuman, and we don't actually have that gift to analyze and feel and see and hear all at once. But the beauty in it when it comes to fruition, and it's just like that pouring, overflowing thing that just kind of pops up in your face. Yeah. And then you make a career of it, and then you impact and change lives, and it's just amazing. I don't know. That hit me in the heart, because it's something where, right now with the marketing company that Caitlin and I launched, I think back of those moments, and there's been 20 or 30 people that have been telling me this for 2 years. How do you get all these people in the room? How do you get this? How do you do this? Hey, you've never launched a mastermind, you launched that. And how'd you attract this? And it's just conversations with friends or with colleagues or with people in the industry or out of the industry. And it's, wow, I should listen to that. I should listen to that. And sometimes we're moving too fast or we're distracted. It's just, it's amazing that it still comes back, though. Yeah. Because it's meant to be. Yeah. It's your soul continuing to remind you, right? It doesn't go away. We can't just stuff our desires down and expect for them to stay down there. It keeps revealing itself. And a lot of times it does reveal itself through other people, because others' observations of us help us see more of who we are. And it's really hard for us to believe sometimes that what we do or who we are could be valuable to someone else, because it comes so easily to us. So sometimes we're clueless to it. We're oblivious to the fact that I was like, wait, this is a thing. I mean, literally when I was in my job at Aramark, even before I was coaching health coaches, somebody came up to me and they were like, you're doing a lot of work to like train people. Like, you can charge for this. And I was like, what? I'm just sharing what I know from like what I learned along the way. And they were like, yeah, that's a thing. And even if I were to go back to when I was a teacher, I remember, so we would always do a quote of the day every single day. Like, I was there to teach math, but I wasn't actually there to teach math, right? I believed that I was there to help create more productive, kind members of society. I just happened to do it through the lens of math. And it just happened to be that people don't necessarily like math. So I thought, how can I make this more enjoyable? Because if we're going to be here, we're going to spend our time doing something, let's make it fun. That was always my thing in every class. And wait, you were selling to your students to do math?
Go figure. I was selling.
For 15 years.
Right. Well, that's how I first learned that I was a salesperson before I was ever a salesperson, right? Like when I realized I was selling math to those high school kids, they weren't coming in with, I mean, they were from Beverly Hills, but they weren't coming in with credit cards trying to pay me to teach them math.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could go into a whole conversation about what that actually, like what a sale actually is and why that's a sale. But that was the first time I went, oh my gosh, I've been dealing with objections. You'll hear a ton of them if you're a math teacher.
All kinds.
Resistance, that I had to build rapport and establish an understanding of like what was important to them, like all the things that make a sale. But before I even realized who I was to them, again, I was just trying to make math fun and make our time together fun. I'm like, we have to be here for 45 minutes every day. Let's at least enjoy it, right? And we'll squeeze the quadratic formula in there somewhere. And so I would start every conversation or every class.
Oh God, quadratic formula. Oh.
I know. I'll nerd out if we go there. I will still sit down and do math problems if given the opportunity. But I was going over the quote of the day. So every single day I had a quote of the day up on the board. And we would spend the first 5 to 10 minutes just talking about life and talking about what that quote meant and what it meant to me. Or, you know, my students always liked hearing stories. And I didn't realize then that like storytelling is a gift, right? So I would always be telling them stories about like my flag football game the night before. Did we win or did we lose or, you know, whatever. And I'm a real competitive person. So I always had stories about some sport that I was playing. And one day, one of them, I remember exactly where I was and exactly what class it was. They said, the whole class was like, Miss Cramer, you should be a life coach. And like, I didn't know what life coaching was then. And and they were all Beverly Hills kids, so I'm sure all their parents had life coaches, right? But I was like, me? My life? Really? Like, I thought that was like a joke. And they were like, yeah, like a motivational speaker. Like, you'd be so good at this. And I was like, thanks, guys. Didn't even quite have the understanding about what that could look like if I did decide to pursue something. But there was something in me that was very clearly going, yeah, that would be cool. But I didn't see the path. And so I stuffed it back down. And to your point, it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up. And I didn't realize there was a quote, actually a YouTube video that I watched once with Joel Osteen. And he talks about the double entendre of the weight room. And there's a weight room, like you've got to build your muscle to be prepared for the next step. And it also could be known as the weight room because you're waiting, right? And you're doing what needs to be done in that wait so that you're prepared for the next step. And I couldn't have gone in that very moment when my students were like, Miss Cramer, you should be a life coach. You should be a motivational speaker. I couldn't have just stepped on a stage and done it. Would have done my best job, but whatever. I didn't realize that the universe was preparing me in ways that I never could have imagined in my own weight room. And making me number one in the nation at sales is a pretty damn good
preparation
bout of credibility to put me in a position to teach others sales. And I don't know what I would have thought or what I would have taught or what platform I would have stood on before then, but I can look back and so clearly see now the through line to what got me here.
It's just amazing. Like it's the passion I can hear in your voice, the excitement, the depth around being the teacher and then moving into the sales role and then helping people with their health and then helping coaches and the ripple effect. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say to someone who may not be seeing those things popping up? And the reason why I ask is because, you were doing other things for 15, 20 years. Like mm-hmm. you were, so what do you say to that person who might be searching but not seeing those micro miracles or those micro moments?
What's interesting is I don't ever think that you see them in the moment as those miracles. And one thing I guess I would invite everyone who's listening to start doing is maybe start seeing through a different lens. Can you notice them and believe in them and trust them in a different way instead of just chalking it up to circumstance or a fluke? Because I know I did that for a long time. I didn't necessarily trust a lot of the things. There's this meme that I always laugh at when I see it, and it's like, "Dear God, could you please give me a signier sign?" And I think we all do that. Like, okay, all right. I see that sign, but give me one that's even signier than that one.
Oh, Nicole, you are hitting a sore spot right now. This is me. I mean, this is in so many ways. I'm just like, and it's until someone says, dude, open your eyes. Like,
yeah.
Like, it was great.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Yes.
Because I always want to, how can I make it better? And how can we do this? And I'm asking about, what's your experience? What could we have done different? What did you think of that? And this didn't go as well. And did it not go as well? And it's like, it was great, dude. It was, I already told you twice.
Yes.
Stop asking me about all the stuff that sucked. I told you twice.
Or I'm going to tell you it sucked because I'm over it. Yeah. No, it's hard when we don't have that level of trust for ourselves. And I can't say that I always have. There's been many times where I've felt stuck, I've felt frustrated, I've felt confused. I didn't know that what was possible for me was possible for me. But I also didn't know along the way that it was these micro moments, like you mentioned, that were going to make the biggest impact. When you look back, Steve Jobs says it. When you look back, you can connect the dots. So what I would say to somebody who's having trouble seeing it, where can you pull from your own history and see that something that you couldn't have known at the time was a miracle, that you couldn't have understood what a critical, pivotal moment that would be for you and what a breadcrumb that was in your life? And how can you then, moving forward, see things in a different light when they do happen? Like, I was just talking to a friend the other day about how I got into sales. And I always said that if I went into sales, I would never sell anything that I didn't believe in, that I wasn't a consumer of. Like, it had to be in integrity with me as a person. Mm-hmm. And I sold coffee at Aramark. I became a coffee drinker 2 months before I got offered the job. For the first time in my life, I actually could call myself a coffee drinker. And then 2 months later, I got offered the job. That's not a coincidence. No. Now, in the moment when it happened, I wouldn't have seen it as a miracle moment. Here's what the miracle was. I was out until 5:30 in the morning at some crazy fun parties in London. I had to go to brunch the next day at 9:30 a.m. with a friend that I was meeting downtown. And I was struggling. And I was sitting in the tube stop waiting for my tube to come take me downtown. And the only thing that was open was this tiny little coffee shop. And they didn't have anything other than coffee, like cappuccinos, lattes. There was no like other caffeine source. So I was like, I'll just muscle down a freaking vanilla latte, right? And when I say muscle down, I say that because I had tried coffee many other times in my life. When I was 15 years old, my first W-2 job was McDonald's. And what did I do? 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. every morning, I made the coffee in the drive-thru. I loved the smell of it. I couldn't get past the taste. I didn't like it. I tried it with ice cream. I tried it with milkshakes. I tried it with everything, creamer, sugar, all the things. Never liked it until one day in England, of all places, probably should have started drinking tea. I needed a caffeine source, and that's all it was. And here I am on the tube just drinking it, and I'm like, all of a sudden my body starts perking up and I'm kind of awake and I'm feeling a lot different than I was 20 minutes before. And as soon as I got off my tube stop, there was another Costa coffee right there. And I went up and got another latte and I was like, I think I just became a coffee drinker. And I remember it like it was yesterday, but I didn't know that I'd be sitting here now, how many years later, telling you about what a magical moment it was. But 2 months later, when I got offered the job, I wasn't even offered the job yet. I was invited to come to the office to meet the team and just see what it felt like to kind of be in an office, right? I happened to have the day off that day of school. It was Columbus Day. So I went, and before I went, I said to the manager, Jared, I said, what do you guys sell? He goes, coffee. I said, of course you do. Of course you do. And that's when it first started to reveal itself as like, oh, maybe there was more to that. And what my friend pointed out when I was telling her the story, she said, there's even more to that, Nick, that you're even seeing right now. Yes, it was the next breadcrumb for you to understand that step of selling coffee was meant for you. But let's look at it this way. The understanding of like doing something different, doing something out of the ordinary that you wouldn't normally do, and what that opens up in your life. So just from the perspective of like, again, if we're talking to anybody who's like, I don't see those, I don't see the steps, I don't see like my micro moments, my miracle moments. What if you just challenged yourself every day to just do one different thing, one out of the ordinary thing? Like for me that day, it was out of need, but I happened to try coffee and I liked it. And that changed my entire life.
A cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee. That I hadn't liked any other time in my life before. Trust me, even when I went to college, I tried to be a coffee drinker in college too. It was Diet Coke. That was my answer to the caffeine that I needed. But and then when I taught at Beverly Hills, I got hundreds of dollars of Starbucks gift cards.
Didn't use, or got sandwiches or hot chocolate.
Well, I found my way to a green matcha green latte, or green tea latte or whatever. Yeah, trust me, I used the gift cards, gained a lot of weight from those matcha lattes. So then when I discovered coffee, I was like, oh, this is even easy. Anyways, it was all the things, but it was life changing, and I couldn't have known in that moment. And I mean, even if we were to go back to what if I didn't have the hangover? What if I'd gotten good sleep that night? What if you know what I mean?
What if it wasn't Columbus Day and you had school?
Yeah.
You couldn't make that appointment.
Yeah.
What if you called into the school and they said, hey, there's actually 3 teachers that already called out.
Right. We need you in.
Can we, the kids need you.
So much could have changed what was a complete trajectory shift in my life. And it came from that one decision to drink coffee.
One of the things that I realized more recently is there's often periods where I don't focus on reflection, or I don't build in time for reflection. Mm-hmm. And what I notice in those periods is I lack the tying certain things together. So for me, reflection is where I find and spend time thinking through a lot of those things and making those connections. And for me, it's in the sauna, right? Because it's alone time, I'm getting my sweat on. It's usually super early in the morning. No one's awake. There's not kids running around. No one's calling me. It's kind of my time. And in those reflection points, in those moments, I start to realize the depth of the wealth of knowledge that I can tie certain things back to. So for instance, I'll give you a super real 2 days ago experience. I'm sitting in the sauna. A client of mine that I'm helping is onboarding and growing his company. So he's hiring a salaried employee, first salaried employee. And I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about how difficult 2012, 2013, 2014 was when I was in my young 20s and I had to hire 180 people. And I ended up firing 96 within the first 4 months. And I remember being so mad and so upset and just pissed that the executive told me to onboard these incumbents because we were taking over the account, knowing that I would fire them because there's a reason why we took the account, right? And there's obviously great players that are in wrong positions or the wrong seat on the bus, and there's people that just don't like the upper management, and the culture was poor, and I worked really hard on all those things, and we rebuilt it. But the advice that came out of my mouth around educating this person to make this hire, how important it is, the lessons I learned from firing all those people so abruptly and then rehiring them and having to own this project that had 180 full-time positions, and all those things started to lead to stories. Mm-hmm. And in that sauna, I had that reflection point of, wow, and bring me back to those moments, and then bring me back to the moment of when I fired someone and the kid reached across the desk and grabbed me by the tie and choked me. And what I realized after that was how much depth I went into the hiring process to make sure and how to communicate effectively, and how to make sure that there's verbal warnings and there's plans of attack and there's, all these other things you can do so it never gets to that point. So now I'm okay, we've got a call next week, and I'm going to share that story, not to say someone's ever going to reach across the desk and grab you, but to make sure you do the things on the right on the front end to never get in that situation. Make sure that if you are terminating someone, that you still have the document, because you are a professional and you do structured interviews. Mm-hmm. So you can give everybody the same shake, and that document has those 8 core important things that you asked that are important to the role. So when they say, oh, I never signed up for that or never said to do that, and you terminate them, you have proof, so they don't have this picture or this situation in their mind that you're fucking them over and you're wrong and they never agreed to this, and there's no leverage. Yeah. You have the original document that you wrote your notes on.
Right.
And it's structured, and you've got 40 other people that you interviewed.
Right.
So it's like those moments where I go back in my early 20s and I remember going to the bar after and just one Bud Light after another, being like, what the fuck? Yeah. You know, like, I'm not, you know, and I was making good money. I was making like 90 grand. And I'm like, I'm not getting paid enough for this shit, you know?
Right.
But it's like, I had to go through that to then have the experience, to then have the opportunity to reflect, to then tie it back to positive impact and how I can coach and educate and help this person so none of those things happen to them.
Yep. That's it.
And I never even would have thought of that story if I wasn't reflecting and having a moment where I was thinking back of, okay, this person, you know, they want to hire, they're scaling. This is going to turn into, you know, if things go right, this is going to turn into 3 months down the road, they're going to have to hire the same position again. Mm-hmm. It starts going into, oh, well, I built SOPs for this and this company in my corporate time, and I hired this many people and I fired this many people, and this was the common thread, and this is what I realized, and this is what the CEO said, and this is where they were wrong, this is where they were right. And
right.
I have all this depth that I can now share on something that I never would have marketed. I never would have put out there. I wouldn't have a funnel for, I wouldn't have a one page for, I wouldn't have any of those things. But because I now can reflect on it, it's like, well, how many people do I know in impact effect community that are scaling and hiring?
Yeah.
Maybe now I can help them.
Yeah. It's almost like that is so I always say, don't let your pain go to waste. We've all had experiences that were less than pleasant. And not that we're meant to share them from every area of our life, but the areas where we can show up and support other people. That story actually wasn't something that happened to us. It happened for us and for the people that can learn from it. And it's like, hey, don't touch that hot stove. I touched it once and here's what happened. You might still touch it. You might, right? There's no better teacher than experience. But when we have something that we can share, and your version of like getting, you know, choked across the table from somebody who's clearly going off the deep end about what's happening in their world is like a beautiful way for you to share with others from story, not from a place of here, let me tell you. Yeah. It's like, let me lead you. And you get to make whatever decision you want to make from this, but I will share what happened to me when I was in that same position. That way you can make an informed decision for yourself.
That's it. I mean, that's, and imagine if I didn't have the confidence to onboard that client. I didn't have the confidence to pitch them the package that they signed up for. Who would be helping them in this moment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would they have that reference point? Would they be doing structured interviews? Would they be potentially doing things today that remove them from lawsuit, that remove them from an altercation in my situation, right? Which probably wouldn't, but like there's so many other things that can really become major problems, and we're doing business, and we're dealing with people. So if you have your stuff structured from the first opportunity you have to accept an application and then interview through the process of documentation, those conversations are easier because it's laid out, right? And the other thing is, wow, I realized I've terminated a lot of people and I'm friends still with a lot of those people. So that's another gift that I reflected upon of like, well, how did I actually do that? And I start thinking back, and then I start realizing this all comes back to human connection.
Yes.
Which I love and which I teach now. So it's like, there's so many different layers that we don't even uncover, but that keeps popping up in those times that we need it most.
Well, just the fact that had your client not been going through that, they attracted that out of you, right? I think a lot of times it can be very easy to believe that we as coaches, consultants, mentors, that it's maybe one-sided. But ultimately, and you know, you've heard me tell stories about my therapist, Kevin, there were times that he would just drop gold and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. He's like, Nick, I wouldn't have said that if you wouldn't have asked the question. Like, you attracted that out of me. And I think sometimes, even going back to what my students told me, they were like, you should be a, you know, motivational speaker or whatever. It's like, we also can look at that human connection of what pulled this out of me. And that value has been living in you for a long time. And it took this client who's going through a similar process for you to say, you know what, let me help you with that. And now you've uncovered this whole area of potency around another way that you can support people from your experience that maybe you would have dismissed and not thought much of otherwise. I had a similar thing a couple of years ago with a client of mine had asked about a podcast. She wanted to start one. She was interested in one. And I kind of accidentally started my podcast. If you want to like call it as it is, I made a very successful podcast, but I let it be the easiest thing that I'd ever done in my business because I started it by accident. So she was like, well, how did you start yours? And I just told her the whole story. I was like, well, here's what I did. It kind of started by accident. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And she literally, like, her jaw was on the ground when I was done. And she goes, that is so valuable. And I was like, I just thought I told you a story about how I started my podcast. And she was like, you could write an entire course on what you just shared with me. Like, do you know how much that helps people to hear all of those steps? I just thought I was telling a story of like, then I did this and then I did this. It wasn't something that I saw as valuable until that moment. Right. And then I realized, oh, okay, I'll share it with some other people then who are thinking about starting a podcast. But that pulled it out of me for me to realize I didn't know that that was so helpful for some people.
Totally. Like, and it's such a, you say it in such a humbled way, right? Like, and there's so many coaches that walk around. There's so many people in the personal development and professional coaching and business world that walk around and it's like, oh, you know, the world needs me, right? I'm so great. The world
Sage
really
on the
needs
stage.
Me.
Yeah.
And the reality is I want to be around the people that are honest and humbled and realize that. And I'm someone that thinks this too. Like, you know how much I learn from others? Do you know how much I learn from engagement in a speech or off stage or, you know, in the green room, even the conversations? Like, yeah, you get paid to do this. You get paid to show up. I mean, look at my events. I did an event on identifying and clarifying your wildest dreams because guess who needed that too?
Yeah. Guess
what that forced Jim to do? Sit down and refine, sit down and think, sit down and realize, oh, this is a season where I want to chase this dream. This is really important, but it's not the season. We're going to put that here. And I would have never done that if I didn't put that event on. Yep. So I can go around and I can sit there and brag and be boastful and say, hey, I do this great dinner event. I do this great thing in this speech and coaching. And it is great. And the reason why I'm going to boldly, confidently say that is because of the feedback.
Yeah.
So it's not me being a jerk, but it went off well. It did.
Yeah.
You were there.
I was there. It was amazing. If I can say, was such a big question that I'd never really answered it for myself. And being in that environment gave me an opportunity to start to get real with myself for the first time. What is my wildest dream? And I won't give too much away about the dinner and how you run them. It's incredible. But I will say, I had the ability to go last. You know that. And that was a big eye-opener for me because hearing what everybody else's were or are helped me refine each time. It was like, ooh, I'm going to take a little bit from that. And I'm going to take, and I then took that moving forward into some different spaces in the past few weeks since the dinner. It has given me clarity that I have not had ever on certain things in my business and my life.
I spoke at an event last night and I walked in and I saw Tammy and she was just at the one we did on Tuesday.
Okay.
And Tammy was like, Jim. And I was like, hey, how are you? Like, what'd you think of the dinner? And she goes, Jim, I didn't sleep Tuesday night. I was up all night thinking about my dreams. And it was just that moment of like, wow.
Yeah.
That's impactful. That's impactful. But this was not a pitch for the dinner by any means. This is more of a realization of I can honestly say that I was doing that to benefit myself as well, because I needed to put myself in that mindset. I needed to put myself in a position to construct that, to reflect, to think deeply, to build that. Me building that helped me so much.
Yeah.
Helped me so much because I reflected on pieces I could bring into it from the past and those little miracle micro moments. But I also realized, wow, I got a lot of work to do myself.
Yeah.
And that was my gift. And I heard it a while ago, and it never even made sense. But someone said, you know, the best way that I learn is when I'm teaching.
Yeah. I was just going to say, teach what we want to learn.
And it's like, wow, that is me in all my ventures, right? Like, I want to talk about trauma because I lived with it and it was really bad. And I want to talk about substance abuse because I did that too. And I want to talk about, not making payroll, losing everything, building it back, having a ton of debt, knocking it down. Like, because as I'm talking and people are going, oh yeah, I had 178,000 in debt and this is what I did, or that's what I did. And yeah, it took 3 years and you're worried it's suddenly you get that debt after one event and you get different perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And then I was talking to a friend the other day and he's like, I got $3,000 on a credit card. And I said, dude, I got 90 from an event I did 18 months ago.
Yeah.
I'm smiling.
Yeah.
I just had another kid, like perspective. He's like, wow, you're right. He did like one of these, like, wow, I gotta get right. Like,
right.
But he was beating himself up for the 17 seconds he was talking about it before. I said, dude, $3,000.
Right.
You'll be okay.
Right.
It's just all those different humbling moments where you share or you teach what you've experienced and then someone responds and they pull more out of you and you go deeper and it's just magical.
Well, and it's like you too? Oh, okay. Like what's personal is universal, right? And we start to feel...
Ooh, what's personal is universal.
Yeah. We start to feel more... I don't know if I want to say justified, but we can accept ourselves more. There's more of an understanding of like, oh, it's not just me. I didn't just fuck everything up and do something bad or do something wrong, whether it's debt or something else. When somebody shares their down and out story, their rock bottom story, it's never to be a comparison. It's more to go, especially when they're on the other side of it and they've, found a way either to reconcile the entire experience or they've found a way to reconcile their own emotions and manage themselves through it, which is really what specifically debt or anything that we're going through as entrepreneurs is all about. It's like, oh, I'm going to be okay. And just from like, I know for me, when I speak about debt, I'm like, listen, regardless of what kind of debt it is, you're always going to be in some level of risk taking as an entrepreneur. And it's not about not taking the risks. It's not about having certainty. It's not about making safe decisions. Sure, there's logic and, calculated risk is good too. But you've got to train yourself to be okay, even when maybe it doesn't feel like it's okay. Or you've made a big decision and you put yourself out there in a bigger way than you ever have. But again, if we were speaking specifically about debt, I just feel like, what company isn't leveraging money that's somebody else's money instead of using their own? That's all it is. It's a tool, right? But early on in entrepreneurship, you can buy into society's version of how we should treat ourselves when we're in debt. And and I'm saying all this from experience because I learned from others who have done it. It's like, oh, that's just entrepreneurship. This is just a part of it. I'm not condoning or proponent, it's make your own decisions. However, all of entrepreneurship is full of risk. And if you allow your debt to be a part of your teacher in how to manage your emotions and how to be more accepting of yourself and compassionate towards yourself, you're going to have a very different experience. And if debt gets to be your teacher in doing that, good. That's why it's there for you.
Dropping bombs over here, Nicole. Yeah. I think about it like finally 35 years of age, I've realized that every day I solve at minimum 10 problems.
Yeah.
Minimum. So when problems come up, now they just roll over my shoulders. You experienced it at the conference this year.
Yep.
Right? Like
5 minutes before go time.
and I'm laughing that the screen's broken and the timer doesn't work and they can't get the TV, so the slides are up and we got to move all the speakers, and I'm just kind of like literally hysterically laughing because I'm like, oh, it's just a problem.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it messed me up a little bit. I was stressed. Sure. I didn't end up doing my little speaking segment, and I was just kind of like in a different headspace. Like, so I'm not perfect, and I'm not saying like I'm great at it, but I'm starting to realize it. And the more that I realize it, I started to realize that business in general is, how can I make a solution to this problem and do it in a profitable way? Mm-hmm. That's all that it is. Mm-hmm. Or to mitigate the risk, right? So if it's not green, well, how much little red can we enter?
Right. How can we make the red smaller?
Yeah.
So it's not quite as big of a risk.
So it's like, well, if my belief is that I am always going to have problems to solve every day, it's what I signed up for, it's what I am as the owner, the CEO, partner, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's going to happen every day.
That's what we should call it. It's not entrepreneurship. It's just risk taker.
I might change my title to that. Dang, that's my journey the last 7 years. Woo!
Yeah.
All right, last question to wrap up. And you asked me, you're like, is there a zinger or a bomb at the end? And I was like, no, but no, I feel like I'm going to have to ask like a zinger. You've coached tons of people, whether it's in the health space, whether it's in corporate, whether it's entrepreneurs, beginners, experienced folks. You've been coached by some of the best, some of friends of ours that we talk about often. You are in so many different groups, circles. Every time I hear your name, it's something of Nicole provided value, or Nicole, oh yeah, Nicole was at that. And oh yeah, you know Nicole Cramer. And you're out there hustling, grinding, you're doing all the things. You've experienced so many conversations around different businesses. My question to you is, knowing all of that and having all that information and knowing that we live in a distraction-oriented world, and taking all that, what would you share with an entrepreneur who is grinding, hustling, working to get to the next level, not where they want to be? What's the most important thing you could share with that person? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I'll ramble here for a couple seconds so you can think. For me, I think one of the most important things is your belief system, because I think your belief system is the root to your thoughts and your emotions and your circumstances, right? What you believe becomes the circumstance. So I think that's what I would share. What would you share?
It's a loaded question. I'm sure you and I could spend days on this. Yes, your belief system for sure. Your focus is your faith. And if you're focusing on limiting beliefs and you're focusing on scarcity and lack, that's what you're going to get more of. The thing that came through for me, first and foremost, was there is no there. And I think a lot of entrepreneurship, and if I personally were to look back, and I say this to my clients all the time, I'm like, I wish I would have started enjoying the journey a lot sooner. I wish I would have seen it for what it is. Entrepreneurship is just a giant self-development seminar. It's actually for you to evolve and grow as a human being in how you make impact in this world and how you connect with other humans. You think you're starting a business and you're going to a personal development seminar is what it really is. And the sooner you start enjoying the journey, the path of it, it will become a different experience, because when you can find joy in the moments of debt, when you can find joy in the moments of shit goes wrong right 5 minutes before your entire hundreds of person event is about to go off, when you can find the silver lining and the joy in those moments, then you're having an experience that's helping you grow and expand, which is what we're meant to do as human beings. But when we're always looking for the there, and what a lot of us do as high achievers, the there then becomes the there, then becomes the there, then becomes the there, and we never get there because we never allow ourselves to stop and celebrate every fucking milestone along the way, because that's all it is. It's just a constant expansion towards growth. And I remember when I was a broke, in debt, down and out teacher at the end of my 15 years, and I just wanted a different solution. I wanted something that I could challenge myself with, and I decided sales would be that thing. I had a list of all the things that were going to make me happy once I had them. Once I had money in the bank and I'd paid off my debt, I had the new car, I had the dog, I had the condo at the beach, I was traveling the world. Those were all the things. Cut to 2 years later, after I left teaching, I had all those things. I was number one in the nation. I had money in the bank. I had the condo at the beach. I had the dog. I was traveling the world. I was doing everything that I said was going to make me happy. And I was more sad and miserable than I'd ever been. And I also had people in my life going, you did it. You're living the dream. You're doing all the things that you said that you wanted to do. And now you did it. You're number one and you're going to be number one again. And this is so great. And you're traveling the world. And I was miserable. And let me tell you, when you don't have those things and you're sad and miserable, and then you get those things and you're even more sad and miserable, that is a hard pill to swallow. And the one thing I knew for sure is that I was not going to take myself off this earth, but I knew for sure I wanted to. And what I learned from that is I thought for sure that getting there was going to make me feel a certain way. I was still chasing the external to feel like it would help me, or to believe that it would help me feel differently, feel enough, feel the confidence, feel all the things. And when that didn't happen from me gathering all of those things that were on my list, it was really challenging. However, what I've now gone on to learn and understand is that it's the journey that is the gift. And as you know, one of my favorite things to say is there's no happily ever after. A very wise man shared that with me once when I was devastatingly stuck in my life. And he said, there's no happily ever after. There's just happily here and now. And I would say that's probably the most important thing that anybody can remember that's just starting out and grinding and doing all the things. Find a way to enjoy the grind. Find a way to enjoy all the what seemingly is minuscule things that will probably turn into your miracle moments, your micro moments. I just decided to start drinking coffee this one day and it opened up my world. What are your drinking coffee moments that you can appreciate, that are already there, that you can seek out, that are right in front of you? And how can you start enjoying the journey? Because that is where you will find the most satisfaction.
Mic drop. Thanks for being here today, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next episode of Impact Effect Podcast.